Syracuse. And this is where it gets really, really weird. She comes back from Miami with her entire head shaved, okay? And I remember my brother told his preschool teacher something about my mom went to her Ammy and got bald-headed. Like they were asking the kids to like write like, oh, just do a journal entry or something, right? Some type of writing exercise. And my brother wrote down, my mom went to her aunt, because Miami, my mom said Miami. So my brother's like, oh, it's her Ammy. And he says, my mom went to her Ammy and got bald-headed. And the teachers called the house to be like, yo, Andrew's writing some really weird, stuff down in his daily journal entries here in preschool. What's going on? And my mom was like, no, it's true. I went to and, told my preschool teachers the whole story. She went to go get initiated in Santeria. And this is sort of where the kind of like awkwardness starts in, because you gotta understand, when we had friends come over to the house, sometimes they would go home, because my mom would have all these like really weird voodoo altars set up, and I'll describe some of those type of little scenes, but just really weird shit, occult shit all around the house. So sometimes my friends would go home and tell their parents, and then their parents would be like, oh, this person's a Satanist. We're never going to let them hang out with those kids again. And, that would be the end of the friendship. So it was stuff like this that would happen again and again and again. And it embarrassed me. It did. It embarrassed me because I knew there wasn't hardly anybody else at, the suburban school I was going to in Syracuse, New York, that was practicing the same weird fucked up shit that my mom was. But she insisted, okay? And I do think it kind of isolated us a little bit because, if you're not in a big city practicing the occult stuff, right, you're in like a small town, it's going to freak those small town people out a little bit more, Of course, some people have, as I said, my mom started developing her own following and her own little cult, and people that she dragged from church or, different, like Wiccan events and stuff that she would go to. But mainstream society, that's why it's so shocking when I try to explain these things when we're talking about the Carters or the celebrities and stuff. People get mad at me because the information is so dark and twisted and it's so new, they feel like they should shoot the messenger, which is, I completely understand that reaction. That's why I just let the comments go. I don't get mad at anybody. I don't take anything personally. But, this is what goes on. So the other weird thing about the Miami trips, right, trips per plural, is that my mom dragged me and my brother down to get initiated and get our quote-unquote beads, right? I don't even remember really exactly what this was, but I remember they gave us like a patron... They gave us these beads, right? They didn't do the chicken cracking thing, but I saw my mom many times crack chickens over people's heads, but I saw my mom get a chicken cracked over on her head. They basically sit in a tub of like voodoo water, and then they fucking rip the chicken's head off and spill the blood everywhere, and I don't know, you're initiated in fucking the lower levels of Santeria. I don't remember exactly what it was that we were supposedly getting initiated in, but we got these like bead things, right? They were like these different color beads, some kind of African beads, and they gave us, like, my patron goddess to be praying to was somebody called Ochun. All right, and Ochun was like basically a water goddess, if that makes any sense, like a goddess of the sea, I think. And so my mom never, ever wanted me to go too far out in the ocean. She didn't like me going out. She wouldn't let me go on field trips where they were taking us to a lake or a swimming pool, because my mom claimed that Ochun wanted me so bad that I would drown and be taken off, into the sea. Forever, for all eternity, enslaved to Ochun, right? This is the kind of crazy shit my mom believed in and tried to convince me of. And I forgot who my brother's was, but my brother had a different patron, voodoo saint to pray to. So we went down there and got our beads. They didn't shave our heads, but they shaved my mom's head, and it was just really fucking weird, dude. So we come back up here, and And I want to say one thing too. When people talk about satanic ritualistic abuse, this is kind of what we're talking about, right? Because you're sort of forcing all of this weird shit onto kids. Kids are watching, very satanic ceremonies where you're like killing chickens and there's a lot of blood. It's pretty gruesome, right? So this is kind of, I can feel myself getting kind of anxious about it because it's similar to like the satanic ritualistic abuse that you hear about from people in the like celebrity world. All right. I don't want to go off on too many tangents here. I feel like we're doing pretty good. I'm giving you guys a good picture of really what's going on here, and I don't think we're going to be able to do this under a half an hour, but we'll try. So let me talk about the altars. All right, my mom would pray to so many different false gods. All right, and I want to say this too. My mom at the very end, because my mom has passed away. The last few years of her life, she did return to Christianity. She found God, prayed for repentance. She went to church. We really did all we could to make sure she didn't end up downstairs, and I'm hoping she didn't. But I just wanted to say that she didn't die practicing occultism, right? This was some weird shit that she was into in her 20s, 30s, and 40s. She spent probably 3 decades deep into this, But a lot of it, too, was like, it was social for her. It was like elitism for her, Like, she liked the aspect of being initiated, having a title that people would follow her for that, other people didn't have. So that was part of it, too. But it was also religious because she genuinely believed this stuff was real. So she would set up all these voodoo altars in the house. We had an altar for Ochun, which was basically, they were like pots, these white pots with like blue-white designs all around them, African symbols and stuff. She had all these weird African statues that were supposed to, represent this, that, and the third. There's another altar that she had of another patron deity, and his name is Byron Samedi. If you practice voodoo or you know anybody who practices voodoo, you might know what I'm talking about. Byron Samedi is basically the god of the dead in these sort of religions. And he is a skull. So my mom literally had not a real skull. If she could get her hands on one, she might have. I don't know. She talked about that, though, how in Miami there were grave robbers who would steal, bones and stuff to add to their Brenda pots, which we'll get to later. But she had like this, plastic skull she got from a Halloween store with a top hat on it, literally. And she would have to feed it. Okay, so what would she feed it? She would literally leave steak or like fish out for weeks and just let it rot in the closet where this, little deity altar thing was set up. So this is the kind of weird shit that dude, I swear, my mom did the decorating. My dad, unfortunately, let my mom decorate the house, which was not a wise decision because this shit was everywhere in our house. This is why it was so embarrassing when we would have friends over, because my friends would ask me about this shit, and I didn't feel like getting into it because I knew they didn't practice this shit. I knew their parents didn't practice this shit. I was like, why can't we just be a normal Christian family? But there's countless ones that she had. She would rotate them sometimes. Sometimes she'd keep like 1 or 2 of them in the closet. She had some in the basement. She had some in the garage. She kept a couple in like closets that were, around the house. It got to the point too where my dad was like, enough is enough. I'm tired of seeing all this voodoo shit all over the house. And to say that like it didn't bring weird vibes into the house, like I'd be lying about that. I don't think my house was demonically possessed, but I had weird experiences, and I always had creepy feelings in my house growing up. Up until the time I was probably like 11 or 12 years old, I couldn't even be in the house alone. If we would get home from school and my mom and my dad weren't there yet, which was rare, but if nobody was home, I would be too scared to go inside the house unless my parents were in there. That's how like weird the vibes got in this place. So my mom would have to feed these things. Our house always smelled like rotten fish or rotten meat. I remember one time my mom started collecting plants, and she would feed the plants fish guts, like watery fish guts, and spill it all over the floor. It was a freaking disaster. But you know, this is my experience, guys. So we get to the point where my mom decides it'd be a good idea to open up a botanica. If you don't know what a botanica is, it's basically like the local voodoo shop. If you live in a big city, you probably have one. Just go online, look up botanica in whatever city you're in, you probably have one. But they sell voodoo dolls, they sell saint candles, they sell incense. It's kind of like a new age store, but it's more like dark and occultic than that. They have like usually a house tarot reader, or they have several different like tea leaf readers. Or I remember my mom got into reading shells, right? She used to believe she could like shake up these shells and like tell people's fortunes and shit. So she decided it would be good to invest whatever savings she had and dump it into this botanica store, right? The most profitable idea my mom ever came up with. So what ends up happening is she goes into business with this woman. We'll call this woman Eve, all right, just to sort of keep some anonymity here. It turns out they ended up having a falling out because Eve's daughter was ongoingly being molested by Eve's father. And so my mom, when she found all this out and realized that Eve's daughter was the victim of this kind of like sexual abuse, my mom, they had a huge falling out. She wanted, obviously, I mean, we'd never spent any time over there with Eve's father. Eve's father wasn't involved in the cult stuff, but make a long story short, they had a falling out because of this, and my mom was like, you have to get her out of this house, you have to get her treatment, yada, yada, yada. And she, Eve was kind of one of my mom's followers. So when my mom was like demanding, because my mom was a good person, my mom like never let us get molested or, any shit like that, but like she tried to help this woman in that way and get this girl counseling and get, the grandfather in jail. And they had a falling out, and she ended up, because she went into business with my mom, it ruined my mom's business. It was a really big disaster, but we'll rewind a little bit here. They end up opening up this voodoo shop, all right? And obviously it wasn't that profitable. There's not that big of a market to buy voodoo supplies or Santeria supplies or occult supplies in Syracuse. There is a store in Syracuse called Seven Rays, which is, they sell all kinds of stuff there. It's very occultic. It's like more like a bookstore, but they have all kinds of weird stuff. My mom used to love to go to that shop. There was also a Native American occult store in Syracuse, New York. I forgot what it was called, though. It was actually run by, a lot of times these are things run, they're run by white people, or the people that pretend to be white, if you know what I mean. And they, it's just weird. It's weird how that works out. Sometimes, like in New Orleans, there's botanicas they're run by like, legitimate black voodoo con artists, you know what I'm saying? But I could do a whole video about the store. There were times where we had to spend, hours and hours and hours in there after school because my mom had to work there, and she wanted us to sort of like help her out around there, and we didn't want to, and we wanted to go home, and like my dad was at work till 6 o'clock at night, but we had to spend a lot of hours there. But there was just a lot of weird experiences there. We had weird people coming into that place. I remember one time this guy wanted my mom to basically tell him how to put a death spell on his like ex or something, and he was just really this evil person that came in, and she kicked him out of the store. And though my mom probably did participate in some of the like evil spell stuff, I'm not sure really how far she took that. I remember one time she put a centipede in one of her, like, remember I told you we were being stalked by the voodoo cult from Haiti? Well, we figured out there was this guy, and she literally bought a centipede. It was a magic spell, she said. She bought a centipede, this big, huge centipede, and put it in a dude's mailbox, okay? So that's like, that was probably the weirdest shit that I ever saw my mom do. But